Mayor, I think you're muted.
I was muted. Thank you. Okay, we'll start over. Thanks everyone for joining us for the work session for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Appreciate everyone's patience. Hopefully, as this will be a very temporary move back to fully virtual meetings. And let's just proceed with our meeting. The first thing on the agenda that's marked is, well, we have two proclamations that will be presented on Thursday. We have a presentation from Brooke Prouty with Uptown Marion. Brooke, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I typically do the annual report in the spring because we run all of our numbers at the end of December for our reporting. But just wanted to give you guys a quick update, and we received our National Main Street report back. So I thought this was a good time to do that and also to go through some construction updates too. So I'm going to run through construction updates, the National Main Street report, a contract that we do every 2 years with Main Street Iowa and the National Main Street or Main Street America program. And then also talk a little bit about our challenge grant we'll be submitting on Thursday. Next, thank you. So business support is really where our head's at right now with the construction going on. Early in the spring, we did some webinars and we also did some Main Street meetings a couple of years in advance of this project. So everyone was well aware of what they should be doing in preparation for construction and connecting with their customers and just getting ready on all fronts for what was to happen this year. We did some business tips and tricks handouts. This last meeting, we did some Pardon Our Mess dollars that are Uptown dollars businesses can hand out for customers that might be frustrated or have a hard time due to the construction to kind of ease that. And then we've done, in this picture, you'll see some update meetings with our building and business owners that have been really successful, and our newsletters, and continuing to meet with building owners for phase 2 projects. Next slide. These are some examples of some other things we've been doing when it's hard to get to a business. We've been doing social media shout outs of how to get there in different ways. The businesses have been awesome. We've been doing weekly shout outs to the people or the businesses that are coming up with new, unique and fun ways to reach their customers, such as putting out signboards and shout outs on Facebook, which is similar to the one on the right. Next slide. Then we've also been doing a lot of public outreach, such as writing news articles, going on TV and radio. We have some pretty frequent updates on Z1 2.9, and we had a really big spread in the CBJ a couple weeks ago. We've been doing Facebook updates and then talking to people at different events about the Streetscape project. It's always fun to see people come up and say, hey, what's going on here? And then you can point it out. And most people are really impressed and really excited to see what's going on. Signage has been a big thing. A couple weeks ago, we put up even more signage, some bigger signs to help with showing people where to go for traffic. We've made rip-off maps for people to find better parking. And then we've also had some big billboards put up and some directional signage to help make it easier for people to find the businesses that are affected. Couple of shout outs. So far, the city's project team has been doing a really awesome job. I hear compliments from the businesses all the time about Rachi Construction, about Amber at Marketing, about Jake and Mike and the engineering team that's been out there. The businesses are really enjoying that communication and respecting that, and that's making it a lot easier for everyone that we've all been working really well together. Also want to say a quick thank you to Grant for doing the aerial pictures. Those are really cool to watch the progress and to be able to post about those. Next, I wanted to touch on Kathy LaPlante came to our community a couple of weeks ago. Thank you to everyone on City Council that was able to attend those meetings. National Main Street partnered with Main Street Iowa 2 years ago to do community visits to all 54 Main Street districts over the course of 2 years. They were postponed from last year to this year, and Kathy was supposed to visit all 54 Main Streets over the course of 2 years. She either got her last year or this year, but then last year's got her this year, and it'll actually go on for 3 years now. But Kathy came to our community a couple weeks ago, and we just received the report this last week. Some of the highlight, and I'll send this to all of you, but some of the highlights she said were she was really impressed by how resilient and collaborative our community has worked together through the challenges of these last few years. The kudos section of her report was really big compared to any other section of her report. So that's always great to see. She did have some comments on some programs we could implement and some areas of improvement, but mostly had a lot of great things to say about our community. One of the things that they are going to be focusing on for our accreditation process in the future is coming up with very specific strategies and achievable, measurable goals that align with those strategies. So she gave us some suggestions on things that she could see our community implementing for those strategies for reaccreditation in the future. That will all be in the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that report too. Lastly, our challenge grant that is due on Thursday, we did a local application. We had 3 people apply for our local challenge grant. The design review committee and the Uptown advisors selected one from those 3 applications to submit to the to the state Main Street competition. The state Main Street gives out 10, 100,000 or equal to that total grants for the challenge grant project. We've been very successful in the past few years with the challenge grants. The Snug, Brick Alley, the Urban Pie building, and last year's is the Friday building were submitted for this challenge grant project. It is a state competitive grant program, so fingers crossed we'll hear back in October if we receive this one. Our applicant this year is Brian and Nikki Guild. They own Sweet Cheesecake, which is currently a home business that is in the process of purchasing the Economy Auto building that was heavily damaged by derecho and has since relocated out of the district. On the bottom right is a rendering that Main Street Iowa staff as a free service has done for them to conceptualize what the building might look like. That's not to say that this is going to be exactly what it looks like, but just to give some inspiration. And then on the picture on the left shows the heavy damage to the building. They plan to tear down the damaged building in the back and have a cheesecake shop, coffee shop in the front with an outdoor patio. So this is a project that we'll start to work on once we hear back from the challenge grant. Any questions?
Yes,
Steve.
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Brooke, could you talk a little bit more about the pardon our mess dollars? How that's being used, what kind of dollars are being involved with that and where that came from?
Yeah, so we have Uptown dollars that are community cash program that we typically sell pretty heavily during the holiday season. Right. That is a certificate program that comes out of our office. We're utilizing that for the Pardon Our Mess dollars. Uptown is buying those ourselves and then distributing those to the businesses at the meetings that we've been having, but also by request to anyone that wants them. They're $5 gift certificates that can be redeemable around Uptown to all the participating businesses that are listed on the sheet. And they're meant to just be for the businesses to use at their discretion to appease any customers that are having a rough day.
Okay, thank you.
Renee has a question.
Yep, thanks, Your Honor. A great report, Brooke. I just had a question about the rendering that you put up of the Cheesecake Coffee Shop. And I know it's, like you said, it's going to be resubmitted, et cetera. My question is that area out of the central corridor that requires at least a 2-level building? Just curious, I'm not sure where that boundary falls.
I think it is outside, and since it's an existing building that they are still using, and Tom would have to correct me on that.
But they're raising it, right? Like they're not.
The
they're
back
not.
half.
Oh,
No, the back half.
Gotcha. Okay, Tom, do you know, or I'm just curious how far out that stretch of that requirement in the overlay district goes? Thanks.
I'm fairly certain out there it does get into a dual story. Dave's on the call, he might be able to tell, but yeah, I mean, that's something we'd look at, but we are treating it as a legal nonconformity in the, so it's an existing building, pre-existing building.
Cool, thank you.
I'm glad to see they landed on a place. They've been looking around for a while and talking to me about various locations, but this seems that I think this is going to be a good location for them. So good job, Brooke.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Any other questions for Brooke?
One thing I will mention before I hop off the call, Rachel, I wasn't sure if the contract was put on this agenda, but as I mentioned at the beginning, the 2-year extension contract will be coming through for your approval. City Council has to sign off on that. It's pretty similar to past years, just committing they call it our wedding vows between Main Street, Iowa, and the national Main Street and the local community to make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as what roles they play in being a Main Street district.
Yes, the contract is a part of item A5 under consent. It's part of that resolution approving support and commitment for the Main Street program.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions for Brooke? I think the signage around the construction site is really great. I notice it anytime I'm around there, so I think it's hopefully it's been very helpful for people. So good job.
I was able to contact staff. That area is outside of the requirement for the two-story minimum.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There's nothing else for Brooke. Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate the update. All right, we'll move on with the consent agenda. None of the items on page 1 have been marked for discussion. Any questions on those? As well as page 2. Any questions on page 1 or 2 related to the consent agenda? Page 3. Okay, page 4. Page 5.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, thank you. Just a general comment. And I was stimulated in asking this question, just given the number of progress payments that we are going to be approving for the library. I just wondered if at some point, and maybe Bill will get into this later in his presentation, but if we could at some point just have a high-level roll-up of expenditures versus budget, and maybe some sense of, the total number of change orders the project has gone through. And as we bring that to closure, as as that project closes up here over the next 6 months or so, just to kind of keep track of where we're going to end up and have any prediction of any shortfalls or surprises that we might have late in the project phasing here.
Okay. So is there a question with that, or it's just a,
No,
Comment.
it was just a comment. I think it would be nice to periodically see that, say every other month, just kind of what the total high level dashboard for the project looks like relative to its finances, as well as any looming risks or anything that might be outstanding.
I agree. Tom, who would be the best person to provide that? Is that,
I think we could work with Bill and Mike and Leanne to provide the documentation that you're requesting.
okay, yeah, I think everyone would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions on any of the agenda items on page 5 or 6? Okay, on page 7. A2 at the bottom of the page is marked. Anything prior to that anyone would like to discuss in particular? Okay, we'll move on then to regular agenda. A1 is not marked. Any questions on A1? All right, we'll proceed to A2.
Your Honor, on Thursday, we will have a public hearing in regard to a development agreement with Medco Holding Company in regard to support of a proposed infrastructure project related to the second phase of the MEC development. Project includes an extension to the MEC Drive and an overlay for the Marion Airport Road. Project is included in the Urban Renewal Area Plan, and the action is consistent with the city's economic development policy and our TIF strategy. Last step before we can certify TIF is to execute a development agreement. Any agreement, Medco will commit to completing the project, and the city will commit to making 8 semi-annual payments capped at $600,000 and subject to annual appropriations.
Thank you, Amal. For the discussion on this item and the next item, I will ask the Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, Steve, to handle the discussion. Thank you.
I'll take any questions if you have any.
Steve?
Yep.
Okay, you got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so now we'll go to E1 under engineering, public comment.
Oh, no,
period
no.
regarding-
No, I'm talking about discussion for A1 and A3. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, A2 and A3. Any
A2 and
discussion?
A3.
Yep, I wanted you to handle the discussion. Thank you.
Got it. Are there any questions about A2 or A3 regarding the Medco Holding Company?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Grant.
Thank you. So I just wanted to better understand what is ultimately the work that would be undertaken on Marion Airport Road. I just want to have clarity on that. I understand that this is the funding mechanism, but I just am curious ultimately what we're going to do there. And specifically, maybe this is for Mike or Tom, would that then work include any kind of alteration of the electric utilities that are in those areas?
I believe this is just an overlay, just regular maintenance for this roadway.
Okay, so it's not prescriptive for any work?
So Grant, for this, it would be very similar to what we just did on Seacrest Road last year. So it's just a mill and overlay.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's, I guess where I was headed with this is this going to also result in any kind of underground utilities in that immediate area?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on this project with Medco out near the airport? All right. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Then moving on to engineering, E1.
Yes, Your Honor. So E1 through E3, so they're kind of grouped together. There's several TAC items. So for the first group of them, it's a request for no parking on REC Drive. This came from Lynn County Rural Electric. The TAC recommendation is to add no parking on the north side of REC Drive. We should have a few comments that we have received that we forwarded to City Council. Some are against, some are for maybe only a portion of it being no parking on one side. And we may have additional comments then on Thursday, but that's what we have so far today. So you have a TAC report in there with staff's recommendation.
Okay, questions from Mike on E1 through E3?
I have a question, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Bo.
So it's in the TAC report, it said from Highway 13, 1,000 feet west. Is that the whole road, 1,000 feet?
Yeah, it actually goes a little bit farther than what the road exists, just in case we get the agreement through that Involta finishes the paving that's supposed to go in, it will cover that as well.
Okay. Other
Yeah.
questions? Yes, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, so Mike, do any of those comments that we received change any of the recommendations that are bringing forward?
They do not.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, E4.
So E4 through E6 is all regarding the access to Tobby Park. So this is a request to add a crosswalk to get them to the park. Tax recommendation is to install a sidewalk along the west side. And at this point, it would only be creating that CIP sheet that then would go into ranking against all the other CIP sheets to be possibly funded in the future. 31st Street actually has a large sidewalk gap all the way from 10th to, what do I have in the tax report here? All the way from 10th to 25th Avenue. And so it's just the recommendation to at least do a smaller project to install the sidewalk along the park. And then for the crosswalk, have them go down to the intersection of McGowan and 31st, as that's a four-way stop with a painted crosswalk. So that's a safer place for them to cross than have them just going mid-block. So again, that is staff's recommendation. There were several that rode against the proposal and did not want sidewalk installed on the west side of 31st. And again, that does not change tax recommendation. That's just the public giving their input on it.
So, Mike, why would people object to having a sidewalk? Is it because they don't want it in front of their house or something, or?
Some of it was that, some of it was they felt that the money could be spent elsewhere. They thought it was an unneeded sidewalk to be installed. And council should have copies of all of the letters that we received so far.
So this would, a favorable action on this would just place it on the CIP?
It would create a CIP sheet to then go into the ranking. So it wouldn't necessarily be funded.
Right. But it
And
would
maybe
be
at some point, but it would
part
at
of the
least.
possible projects.
Correct.
And then at some point it could be given priority to be actually funded.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any questions on this item? All right, next. E7,
So the next group would be 7 through 9. This is a request that came through Medco. They are asking for a turn lane for northbound to eastbound at 151 in Linear or 13 in Linear. Right now, there's a gravel shoulder that if the semis don't slow down, they do overhang that. That would cause the signal for the eastbound traffic to have to be relocated because it'd be in that 10-foot clear zone. So it's not as simple as just adding a turn lane. So similar to the last request, this is just creating a CIP sheet to put in the other CIP sheets to rank against all the other projects to see how it shakes out. So this isn't approving the project today, but it is approving it to possibly be a project in the future. I believe we had one comment that was for this as well.
all right, questions or comments on this item?
I have one, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
How does that work then with it being DOT needs to approve that's correct? So with it being a highway, so if we want it, we need their approval still too, correct?
Yep, there would be permits that they would have to approve it as well. But even before that, we have to have money to be able to build it. So that's step one.
So it would be 100% on the city, even though it's a highway.
Yeah, there's a possibility we could apply for some grants and stuff, but I don't know that this would meet safety requirements just because a semi's off tracking. I don't think they're going to participate in that.
Okay, go
Your
ahead,
Honor.
Steve.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm
I
looking
can-
at the hand raised, the hand raised hands, but I'm not seeing them. So go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
so my comment on this, I think with the expansion out there, Quick Trip and the storage facilities that are out in that area, I think you're gonna see a lot more traffic going north and turning east on Lynn Air. So, I mean, I know it's coming from the semis, the semi traffic, at least kind of starting the request, but just from the standpoint of the amount of traffic that's on going north on 13, and I think more traffic starting to turn east there, I think is another reason why that has justification.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, just a comment relative to the number of people that are supporting it. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the Medco letter that we received. That was on behalf of a dozen or better business owners in that area. So it seems to me there's broad support from this, at least from the business community in that area.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, next item, Mike.
The next item was a request to add some signs on Lyric Court. This is a dead end street that has a cul-de-sac on it. One of them was to request the children at play, which we have given the same recommendation prior of not putting up those signs because there's no studies that prove that they are effective. One of the requests was to add a do not enter and a dead end sign. And so TAC is recommending that at least the sign be put in, even though you can see that that's a end of a street, and just put the no outlet sign, the W14-2. There were 2 side swipes on that street, both of which illegally parked vehicle was hit. So at least putting the no outlet. So hopefully those that are not trying to cut into Albernet Road know that that does not go anywhere.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, on the children at play signs, you said that there's no studies that show they're effective, but I mean, can it hurt? Is there a negative side to having them?
Yeah, I would recommend that you take a look at the link that I provided prior to Thursday. It actually adds a little bit more danger by making them feel that it's safe to play in the street. It's also not an approved MUTCD sign. And so again, you're putting up a sign that's not technically legal.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? Does that take care of E10 through E12, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, then E13.
So this is an existing intersection that is yield control for east and west traffic. North-south traffic is free flowing. The request was to switch out the yield signs for stop signs, and TAC concurs with that. There's been several accidents where they have ran the yield signs. So it has both the recommendation to put the stop signs out and then also do some targeted patrols with the police department.
Okay, questions? Seems pretty straightforward.
And all the comments we got from the citizens were in support so far.
Good. Okay, does that take care of through E16?
Yes.
All right, then E17.
So E17 is one of our next neighborhood street improvement projects through the local option sales tax. So this is 3rd Avenue reconstruction. So we're breaking it into 2 separate phases. The first one will be 26th Street to 31st Street. So that'll be done starting next construction season. And then the second stage will be 26th Street through 26th through 22nd Street. And that'll be the following construction season. So you can see there's $1,000 per day in liquidated damages for each of those phases. It's approximately a $1.55 million project. Bids would be due on 10/12/21 and then come back to council on 10/21/21.
Great, I know this is one of those streets that's sometimes cited when people are complaining about the quality of our streets, so good to see that one come up on the list. Any questions for Mike on this?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, where did this, did this get evaluated under our, what was it, our PCI pavement condition
Yes,
indexing system?
yes.
What, do you recall offhand, kind of where it rated on that basis?
It would have been very low. I'm guessing the 20s or 30s.
Okay. I think that I just,
I can have the exact number for you on Thursday if you want it.
oh, might just be good for reference, because I think at least I was very enthused about utilizing that system to try to take the emotion out of where we put our primary attention. So I think that's great. Thanks.
Yes, Will.
Mike, when does that street get notified that about the reconstruction? How soon?
So generally we send out one letter during the design of it so that we can take things like ADA into account so that we can put that in the plans. And then once we actually have an actual contractor and a schedule, then they do posting as well. And I believe it's 2 weeks out that we give them a hard notice of when their driveway is going to be impacted.
So when does that design happen? It's a block behind me, and I know obviously I've got friends who live on that street. So just curious when they're going to know, because I'm sure I'll get asked questions.
So I'm going to guess the first letter should have already went out. I can check with the staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks.
Yep. So this is approving the plan. So we've already been out there, we've surveyed, so they should have noticed things happening.
Okay, other questions for Mike on that one? And that's a total reconstruction, Mike? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Okay, if there's no further questions, E18 is the next item. Steve, you have this one.
So this is just approving the contract and bond. We let this project, we had 3 bidders. Rachi came in as the low bid. The late start is 9/27/21, 40 working days at $300 per day in liquidated damages. And then there's 7 calendar days with liquidated damages of $4,000 per day. And those are the days that are the incentive, disincentive when we actually close the runway down. So we're recommending approval of the contract and bond.
So based upon that schedule, we would anticipate that getting done before the winter starts.
That's the plan.
Any questions by the council?
Yes,
Hi, Grant.
thank you. Mike, how much lead time will Luxair and the rest be given prior to having the runway closed?
So technically, the first FAA notice has already gone out. But as we get progressively closer, we have requirements in the plans of when we have to let them know. And then they will have to issue a NOTAM when we actually close the runway. So they will know what's happening.
Okay, but there's not an active NOTAM at this point?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Just the FAA that is on notice that the runway will be closing.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on with F1. Go ahead, Nick.
F1.
Yeah, we provided, I provided 2 updates to the staff report from the previous public hearing and the previous reading, second reading. The first one was an amendment request by Kurt and Barbara Gill for their property off of the southeast corner of Albernet Road and Tower Terrace. The first image on the property there. Staff had, it's currently zoned office 01. Staff had proposed OS, office services. The Gills came in, indicated that they'd like to build a home on that site. There's currently a home on there right now. They'd like to move into that home, build a new home, then tear the old home down in the future. But they are currently living in that home on the site. They've requested for residential zoning. Looking at it, we have the suburban residential single family district right adjacent to it. To the south with all the platted homes. Not a huge objection to it since it is an existing home on the site. And it does leave about an acre to the north for a office-like commercial type of development. And an acre is fine. They just kind of lose the ability to have an access to that commercial site off of Albernet Road should the subject property be rezoned to residential. They'd have to come back in and rezone it to commercial or office if they wanted to get that access in the future. There is a mid-block access on Tower Terrace Road between the fire station and the roundabout, a right-in, right-out access. So that property does have access there to the north. No real objection to that request. It is adjacent to residential, and it is a existing single-family home. The second request came from Sam Niemer, as you recall. I think he stopped in at the I think it was the second reading of the ordinance. He had indicated he has some concerns with the zoning because he currently cuts grass on the property and he indicated for hay that he was giving to some folks. We looked at it. Our new agricultural district is really targeted toward commercial operations. Your traditional farmers, 40 acres plus. So we really couldn't make the leap to a commercial agricultural site at this location. But we were proposing a suburban estate zoning, which is just large lot residential. But when we got looking at the property a little bit closer, it's still a suitable zoning district. But when we got looking at closer, he is not currently on a city well or sewer, or I'm sorry, city water or sewer. He's on a septic and well on the property. And we have a rural residential zoning district that might be a little bit better suited for him in the zoning as a property is currently being used, since it's not really attached to any of the city utilities. But to give the property an ag holding zoning designation just does not suitable for that property, as cutting hay on the property or growing a garden is perfectly acceptable. He'll be allowed to continue cutting hay as a, as the grandfathered use, as a legal non-conforming use on the property. So the zoning won't stop him from cutting hay or growing a large garden on the property. And we have the ag ordinance as well that would encourage some small scale agricultural activity regardless of the zoning on the property. So those are the two requests that came in after the second meeting, between the second and third reading. It's really an insubstantial change, in our opinion. I mean, again, the existing O1 on the Guild property allows single family homes. The requested zoning allows single family homes. And then the Niemer property, while we were proposing a single family zoning district, we're still proposing a single family district, just a little bit different to reflect how the property is being used. All the other amendments are still in place. Nothing else has been notified, or we've received no other correspondence since the second reading regarding the entire Ward 4 update.
So you're making these two changes to what was proposed?
We're recommending them. Again,
My question is, does there have to be specific action to adopt those to your proposed ordinance, or?
yeah, Kara, I think Kara's online here. We were talking about this and how that can be accomplished. Let's see here.
Yes,
Sure. Oh, here you go.
sorry.
Yeah.
I am on. So Dave and I talked about the ordinances, and the changes that are being proposed really only affect the properties that the requests are being made for. They don't, and when I talked to Dave, it sounded like there weren't going to be any changes to permitted uses or anything that would call into question needing to renotice any of the neighbors or anything. So being that it's not a substantive change like that, I didn't see any problem with making those small amendments and moving forward.
Well, no, that wasn't my question, though. My question was, do we have to do anything formally to include those small amendments? Or do we just, is it just taken as it is? Or
Yes, so in between each reading, we can make small amendments without having to do anything formally. It's just approving it as it is on this day. We don't have to do anything different. This is similar to, I think there was a while back, we made a really small change to another ordinance that was like a one-word change or something like that. So we didn't need to go back through the whole process. So as long as it's not a substantive change that would have a big effect on things, then we don't need to go back through and renotice everyone.
okay, is that all right with everyone? Any questions on this item? Okay, thank you. F2.
Yes, this is a request for demolition of a detached garage within the Terrace Park Historic District, just located east of 11th Street and south of 10th Avenue. I've kind of highlighted it there on the screen on the PowerPoint presentation. It's a garage on the rear of the property. It was damaged in derecho. Some of the photographs didn't do justice in the staff report, but it had shifted off its foundation. The property owner had been working with him quite a bit, and he was unable to really find a contractor that would really take it on due to some of the damage, a lot of broken support inside, as well as being shifted off the foundation. So he eventually decided demolition would be his best bet. Being in the historic district, the city council gets to review all demolition requests, and that's after the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the makes a recommendation on it. They did not have any objection to the removal of the garage. While it is in the period of significance, it's on the tail end of the period of significance in that district, which is up to about 1930, mid 30s, I believe. This is built in right at their tail end of that period of significance. Our consultant did call it a contributing garage, again, only because it was built in that time period. But the structure was, unfortunately, it's just a little too far gone to rebuild reasonably. So he is going to reconstruct on the site. He did get a variance approved last month to basically put the exact same size garage right back on the property, right where it sits. He's actually not going to use it as a garage too much. He isn't. Future owners could. He will be required to have a hard surface to it. It's just grass now, but he'll mainly be using it for storage. And unfortunate, he is going to work with a couple of local organizations to take some of the wood and hardware off of it and get that hopefully into the hands of some people that can use it. Then he's got somebody else going to take a lot of the wood and do some reclaimed projects with it as well. So he's trying to salvage what he does have if the request is approved. Any questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Grant.
Dave, maybe I missed it. If you said it, did the Historic Preservation Commission agree with this? Did they?
Yeah, it was last month unanimous agreement that it can be torn down.
Okay, I guess I just didn't see that in the staff report, that was their action. Maybe I'm also missing.
No, you're not. It looks like I didn't have that in my report, but no, they did recommend approval of it. So.
Okay, I just would, on that point, then recommend maybe if, for our action on this Thursday, if that amendment could be made in the staff report.
Yeah, I can add some notes to it.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? All right. So that brings us to item 1 under other department discussions. American Rescue Plan grant update.
Your Honor, I wanted to give you an update on the American Rescue Plan funding. It's going to be a quick update. ARPA was signed into law on March 11th of 2021. And as a response to COVID-19 pandemic, funding was intended to be an economic stimulus package and a very much needed relief to communities with recovery. Out of 1.9 trillion, 350 billion were made available to states and local governments. Pie chart in front of you shows how this 350 billion is divided among local governments categories. Our share comes from the 19.5 billion set aside for non-entitlement cities. Those are smaller communities or cities with population less than 50,000. What it means is that we don't get a direct deposit from the federal government. Rather, our funds were funneled through state government. State of Iowa requested their ARPA funding in July, and we filed an application with them right away. Next slide, Terrell. We are eligible for 6 million, and to put it in perspective, Lynn County will be receiving 44 million, and Cedar Rapids will be receiving 28 million. Hiawatha, on the other hand, will be eligible for 1.1 million. The timeline for the required timeline is that the monies has to be obligated by December of 2024, and it has to be spent by December of 2026. Good news, we already received our 30 million. So the money comes in 2 installments, 50% upfront, and the other 50 will come a year later. We received our monies in August. So we're expecting a year later to receive the other 3 million. So our goal is to figure out how we can best use the funding to meet the needs of our community and to make a lasting change. So we're thinking about guiding principles on how we can utilize the ARPA funding is maximizing the impact of the funding, and do our best to leverage partnerships and outside funding, putting partnerships with the county and other entities in the metro. And then also we want to avoid duplication with other relief programs. And according to the interim final rule released by the Treasury Department on May 17th, there are 4 eligible categories. We can use the money towards programs that are to address or respond to public health and economic impacts. And we can use it towards projects that are intended for extensions or maintenance or improvements to water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. And we are not able to use it for premium pay for workers performing essential work or to replace the lost revenue and restoring government services levels. We're not eligible for the 2 categories, 3 and 4, because we have not seen any loss in revenue because of COVID. We are not able to use the funding as a federal matching requirement. We are not able to use it to replace lost utility revenue and for projects that are not directly addressed in ARPA, or to contribute to reserve funds, reduce our taxes, or pay our debts. We cannot use it for pensions. In terms of planning timeline, we are planning on seeking a community input on priorities through October, and we are planning on incorporating the allocation process with our regular CIP and budget process. So target for adoption on a spending plan around February timeframe. And from there, I think we'll be looking for compliance after the adoption of our budget and our CIP. That's it. Take any questions if you have any.
Okay, thanks, Amal. Questions? Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Thank you. Amal, or Carol, I guess, if we could back up a couple of slides, I just have a question. One more. I was kidding, one more. Here we are. Thank you. Amal, do you have any visibility on how the allocation of $6 million to Marion versus Lynn County, Cedar Rapids, and Hiawatha, what that process was and where those decisions were made? I'm kind of just curious how that was managed. Not that I am concerned about it. I'm just curious of the basis of those allocations.
I believe the state does that, and they have a formula to distribute based on, there are multiple components to that formula, including populations count.
Okay. So there's been some news coverage of the city of Cedar Rapids and the county cooperating on the use and spending of the funds they're getting. I assume that means Cedar Rapids will be seeking some portion of Lynn County's funding. Are we looking at ways we can also apply for grants from the county for use of some of these funds? So
Yes.
that we can stretch out and maximize what we're getting?
I believe we are eligible to apply, and we are planning on applying with Lynn County.
And I assume, have we reached out to them about that? I mean, I assume they're cooperative, just like they are with Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, we have.
We were in discussions with them in regard to infrastructure extensions. And I believe we're waiting until we formulate our projects and costs. And we're looking into the programs and the projects that are already set and we have and before we can apply. In the application, you have to describe your project and you have to make that connection or nexus to COVID impact.
So many of the programs that would come out of the social services side of the Lynn County dollars. So if it was housing or assistance to those that were impacted by, potentially the COVID response, whatever they come up with, citizens of Marion would be able to apply for those programs directly. It's more of the infrastructure stuff that we're looking at, kind of coordinating with. As county dollars, it's great if they're going to open those programs up for all of Lynn County, and then everyone can kind of access those within the city as well as the county or Cedar Rapids or what have you. Ours is mostly the conversations we want to have is more related to infrastructure.
Right, but just to be clear, we are an eligible organization. I mean, they have $44 million and eligible organizations can apply for portions of that $44 million for various projects that they have that would qualify. And then we are an eligible organization that we can seek some of that funding through the county so that we can, again, maximize our 6 million and be able to do more. Yeah, I assume that's being considered.
Yes.
Yes, and I believe they're still doing community inputs, and they have a survey, and they're still planning on opening up the application process. So applications are not up yet.
Great. Well, certainly a lot of great opportunity in this. Anyone else have questions?
Nick?
Go ahead.
So Amal, so one of the areas that Cedar Rapids is considering is affordable housing, which we have had discussions in Marion also. But if I look at your 4 buckets, so there's only 2 that we can consider, which is COVID and infrastructure like water, sewer. Where does affordable housing and a few of these other programs that Lynn County and Cedar Rapids are considering? They seem to be not directly under those, but are some of those definitions much broader than what they appear to be on the surface?
Correct. So affordable housing falls under number 1.
Okay.
Which is public health and economic impact. I believe the bill gave a lot of emphasis to equity and resiliency. So we are able to, if we have a housing program, we are able to use that funding towards that program under this category.
Yeah, and I think what else, part of the interpretation is that if you're assisting the low and moderate income folks at the 80% or lower level, that you're actually impacting those that were most impacted by the pandemic. So a lot of the programs that are being identified are ones that directly benefit low and moderate income folks. So the difference, it's much easier for the county and the city of Cedar Rapids to dump those dollars into their own specific programs, because one, Cedar Rapids is an entitlement community. They're set up, they have a housing division, they have housing programs, Section 8, they got everything in place that can do what they need to get done. The county is the same way. They got public health, they got all those things. So our problem with doing those types of programs is we don't have those people in place. So anything we do in that regard, we would likely contract with ECOG as our administrator for those programs. So the dollars can still be filtered through them. I would also point out that we could use the funds through the Lynn County Housing Trust Fund. Those dollars, then we would have to pay to have some administration done, either whether it's ECOG or the Lynn County Housing Trust Fund. But the dollars then are, we're just contracting the services for those grants through the agencies that are used to doing them. We did meet with Tracy Achenbach with ECOG last week, and she's putting together some options, not only for these dollars, but also just housing assistance dollars. There are some CDBG dollars that we think we're maybe able to tap into outside of the ARPA dollars, but that would be where we would go. So let's say something came out saying there's an affordable housing component to this, which I would imagine there will be, we can then look at the programs that can be implemented through the COG, whether that's down payment assistance, whether that's housing rehab, rental rehab. There's a whole host of opportunities there. And we'd have to ensure that they're being implemented consistent with the LMI guidelines and that whatever federal standards are in place for them. But those options exist. They're just not as easy for us as a community that has those folks, on their team already.
Well, I'm
So
glad
the-
we're getting public input. 'Cause again, I know the easy way to spend these dollars would be to say, let's just spend it on streets and water and sewer. Obviously, there's plenty of need there, but I think it's also an opportunity to put some of those dollars into programs that maybe are not part of our current budget and can expand some of the services and support some of the need that's in our community that is currently not funded at the right level. So I look forward to the public input, and I would assume some of that will push in that direction.
Yeah. Amal, I don't know if we were talking about a survey. Amal, you had some ideas. It would be more of a survey.
Correct. We are planning on putting out a survey for the community to help us with prioritizing those project categories. For example, in the area of housing, we know that the county is working on, I believe, utilities and rent assistance that is available for our community as well. So we're looking into a housing rehab to make sure we're not duplicating those benefits. But we are planning on listing those project categories, for example, rental housing or housing assistance, transit service, improvement and infrastructure projects, and have the community help us on where the priorities are, or are we seeing what the community sees in terms of needs?
And just to clarify, infrastructure is very specific with regard to these dollars. It's water, sewer, broadband. So streets and bridges and sidewalks, and none of that is available through these dollars. So it's just sewer and water.
And broadband, even broadband is limited to serving low-income community, extending the service that is not readily available to them, or it's not provided by private sector.
Well, I think if we go out for public input, you're going to have to definitely be expanding the definition of that first category called COVID, because a lot of people are not going to understand all the potential opportunities or uses for those dollars that may be there. So you're going to have to give them a much broader checklist than what is currently under that definition you gave us.
Yeah. Well, I think we're looking at broad buckets, housing assistance, business assistance, nonprofit, you know what I mean? There's.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a really great potential project is what Amal was talking about with the housing rehab, because there's so many different needs that would be served by that. You think about the affordable housing stock that is in our historic core to help people rehab some of those properties with grants that would maintain a quality stock of affordable housing. It would help with preserving those homes. It's economic development. There's so many different aspects to it, and so I think that's a great potential project. I had a conversation with Ms. Achenbach, and ECOG would be would help administer that. I think it's a great potential project. So any other questions? Okay, thanks, Amal, Tom, everyone who's been working on that. Next item is a presentation regarding the library building project. Do we have Amy with us? Is that who's doing this?
Good evening, Your Honor and council
Oh,
members. This
it's
is Bill
Bill.
Carroll.
Okay.
I do have Amy is with us this evening, and she is going to discuss some of the capital campaign update pieces to the new building. So just I wanted to give you a very brief overview of where we are with the construction with the new building, as well as a brief overview of some of the financials. I'll get to that in a little bit. But just to refresh your memories, groundbreaking for the new building commenced on October 1st last year. The topping off ceremony, where the last steel beam was installed on the infrastructure, was March 22nd, and things have been going pretty smoothly, knock on wood, since then. The Bush Construction has committed to key turnover to us on January 11th, 2022, with an anticipated opening date in March 2022. The Board of Trustees has not yet set an official grand opening date for us. When I have that information, I will absolutely share that with you all. So next slide, please. So hopefully many of you get to pass by the building on your way to work, or get to see it a couple times a week. There's been tremendous visual progress on the building. It seems like every single day there's something new to see. But some of the latest highlights that we have includes exterior masonry being completed on the building. Window frames and glazing installation is complete on the eastern and northern elevations, with the southern area being slated for completion in the next week or two. There is permanent power and temporary climate controls installed in the building. The temporary climate controls are in an effort to help with the mudding of the drywall in the building. So the climate control is humidity control. So the less humidity there is, the quicker the mud dries, and that helps keep them on schedule. The gypsum wallboard has been installed, taped, and mudded on much of the second floor of the building. I'll show you a couple of pictures of that in just a moment or two. And the primary focus for the drywall has been on the second floor, with attention being paid to the first floor after the majority of the mudding on the second floor. Overhead mechanical, electrical, and plumbing installing is nearing completion on the second floor, with wall cover inspection on first floor completed. One of the big highlights over the last couple weeks has been the installation of the main entrance staircase. So next slide, please. I'll show you a picture of the staircase in just a moment. On the left is an area where some of our second floor study rooms are, and I call your attention to the walls. There's drywall. There's drywall, there's tape, there's mudding, there's a coat of primer, there's even a first coat of paint in some areas. So the inside of the second floor of the library is actually starting to look like what it's going to look like when we're open for business. The photograph on the right side is also on the second floor. You can see in the rear left side that there is drywall hung, but it's still in a lesser completed phase, where there's still mud on the wall. Of course, no primer on that section, but things are coming along quite nicely on the second floor. Next slide, please. Whereas the first floor is a little bit rougher right now, which is what the schedule called for. So if you look on the left side, where the first floor children's interactive space is going to be, the future home of the large interactive tree that I've seen sketches of, you'll see a lot of steel beams still. You won't see a lot of finishings. This is an area, as well as the rest of the first floor, that is going to be completed in the next month or two. So we're still a little ways on the first floor, but we're getting there. As you can see in the photograph on the right side, there is the main entrance staircase. That is going to be a focal point for patrons and visitors alike when they come into the main entrance of the library. It is expected to be quite spectacular once it is prettied up and completed as we get closer to grand opening. Next slide, please. Yes. So upcoming things to be on the lookout for: window frames and glazing completion, except for on the west side of the building, should be finished up by the middle to later part of this month. That upper west side where the window frame and glazing is not going to be completed is due to it being used as an entryway for heavy equipment and supplies. So they still need to get big pieces in and out of the building. That framing and glazing will be completed towards the conclusion of the project, later in the project as we get closer to January. The sidewalk has been poured around the building, so that looks pretty cool. The parking lot they have been working on for the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so. You probably see them out there tamping down the grade. You've seen them probably pouring a couple areas of concrete. So that is expected to be finished here in the next couple weeks. So a lot going on, a lot to look forward to. Next slide, please. So the important stuff, the money. So this is a very, very high level view of budgeted amount and expenditures through today for the project. And I'm not going to read every single line to you, but what I will point out to you is that every single building area in the first column has expenditures that are under the budgeted amount at this time. So we are under budget thus far. And I call your attention to the two green areas, the contingency and the escalation. As of right now, no money has been spent in those two areas. And of course, the contingency and escalation areas are the budgeted amounts of money to help with overages, unexpected fees, things that may be out of control for supplies or changes that may need to be gone through for whatever reason. So very good news there, almost $1 million that has not yet been expended. I again will knock on wood. And hoping that those expenditures will be kept down in the coming months as we march towards conclusion of the project. So with all that being said, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, well, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to introduce Amy Geiger, who is going to give you a brief summarization of where we are with the foundation campaign.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you what we are working on and have been working on. Very exciting news. It's great to see the building go up and great story to tell with our donors. So if you'll recall, the Library Foundation is responsible for raising $3 million for the capital campaign for the library building itself. And to date, we have raised $2,663,509. That leaves a balance of $336,000 to raise for the building. To date, we are still in the process of grant writing and visiting with prospects. We do have asks out right now, or requests out, if you will, around the $250,000 mark. I have no idea if those will come in at that level, but it gives you a sense of where we are with continuing to raise funds to close that $300,000 gap. We have had 143 individuals contribute, 45 businesses, and 5 foundations, and those numbers continue to increase. Many of our naming opportunities, our key naming opportunities, have been selected and funded. We still have a few of the larger, as an example, the adult library, I think, is $100,000. We still have that out. So still visiting with people about some naming opportunities. But again, many of those key ones have been selected. Our next steps for the campaign, we have a list of prospects that were identified before the campaign started. And as we work through that list, we have some individuals on that list that we'd like to visit with before we kind of close out the campaign. So we are looking at, in fundraising, as many as you may know, and I think this is just true in almost anything in life, it's the right person, ask person at the right time. And so really spending some quality time looking at who haven't we visited with yet, who's on that prospect list, who's the right person to open that door for us, and then make that presentation. So that's the phase we're in right now. As we finish that up, we will be doing a direct mail piece. Look, I'm thinking that will go out. Our goal is to have that go out the end of October, and that will go out kind of to the general public, offering an opportunity for them to participate in the campaign if they so wish. A lot of times that's where you get some of the smaller $50, $100, $200. Sometimes you get a surprise in there as well, but it kind of helps cement that this is a community, this library is for all of us, and we all have the opportunity to support it. So that is in a nutshell where we're at. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Pardon my interruption. I did have one last thing to tell Your Honor and council members. I was hoping to have a link to share with you this evening for a virtual tour that we have created of the inside of the building. Unfortunately, the virtual tour video, I am told, was still rendering, and I had to look that up to see what that meant. So it's still doing its magic IT thing to be able to be viewed. So as soon as I have that link to share with you all, I will do so. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I would just like to say that Bill is speaking my language with rendering and virtual. So thanks, nice to hear some common vernacular.
Oh, sorry, I just realized I was muted. So during the presentation, there was a lot of noise outside, so I muted my screen. So sorry about that. Were there any questions for Amy or for Bill? All right, well, thanks for all your work on it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the COVID update.
I really didn't have much to bring forward, except for that, you know, the numbers kind of rise and fall, and I'm sure everybody's watching the news. We did have a little bit of a bout through the building here, so we're looking to move forward with, just for the month of September at this point, to kind of go to the virtual meeting setting. You know, the less number of folks we can bring into the building, the easier it is for us to stay working. Lynn County, on a call today, just had an event where they had to close one of their offices for a couple days because of either COVID or a COVID interaction. And so, you know, I sent that email out on Friday. We're looking to move in that direction. And then we are moving towards the mask mandate in the building for all employees and those visiting as well, just to keep everything in line with CDC guidelines. I think most of the departments have notified their committees that we're moving in that direction. But as I said, we'll continue to monitor the situation, and we're really just looking for 30 days to give everybody kind of a break here. It's specifically at City Hall, but the other buildings as well. Didn't know if there's any questions on that. I just wanted to provide the opportunity for the council to weigh in on that situation if there was a desire. But really, I think at this point, that's where we're at.
Any questions or comments? All right. That brings us to the closed session. Renee, would you like to make the motion?
Sorry, I found myself muted as well. A motion to adjourn to closed session regarding litigation and land acquisition as permitted under section 21.5 1C and section 21.5 of the Code of Iowa, and there will be 3 separate items.
Second,
Been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session regarding litigation and land acquisition as permitted under section 21.51C and section 21.51J of the Code of Iowa. Any, may we have the legal statement, please?
Kara, you're muted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry, I thought I hit the mute button. I reviewed the proposed subject matter for the closed sessions and find the same to be appropriate under Iowa Code Section 21.51C and 1J.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or questions for Kara before we vote? All right, let's have the roll call vote, Rachel. Thank you.
Mr. Harper,
yes.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Mayor Abu Osley,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Gedalia,
Yes.
Mr. Sternad.
Yes.
Okay, we have approval and we are now adjourned to closed session. Thank you everyone for joining us. So Rachel, we should log on to the other link, is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.